If you were the richest person on earth, what would you teach your child? How to make more money? How to build a bigger empire? Or how not to let money destroy their soul? Over 100 years ago, John D. Rockefeller, founder of Standard Oil and once the man who controlled nearly 90% of America's oil industry, wrote 38 letters to his son. But what shocked the world was this: not a single letter was about getting rich. Instead, Rockefeller wrote about virtue, gratitude, discipline, and the responsibility that comes with wealth. He understood something timeless, that keeping your wealth is far easier than keeping your character once you have it. And over time, those 38 letters became one of the most profound spiritual testaments ever written about money, morality, and the art of living. In this video, I'll help you uncover 6 timeless lessons hidden within those letters. Lessons not just for one son, but for anyone who seeks to live richly without losing themselves in the process. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss more book summaries that help you grow not only in wealth, but also in wisdom and soul. Part 1. Wealth is not just about money, it's about responsibility. Among the 38 letters John D. Rockefeller wrote to his son, what stands out most isn't how to make money, but how to stay grounded after becoming rich. The man known as the Oil King, a symbol of prosperity in early 20th century America, devoted most of his heart and wisdom not to business tactics, but to character, morality, and the responsibility that comes with wealth. Rockefeller once wrote, "Money doesn't make a man great, it only magnifies what's already inside him." He had seen many of his fellow tycoons fall, men who believed their wealth placed them above the law, above ethics, and above others. That's why in letter after letter, he warned his son, never let wealth cloud your humanity. To Rockefeller, wealth was a test of the soul. It wasn't measured by the size of one's fortune, but how one used it. He believed responsibility was the true currency of the wealthy. The real winner, he said, is not the one who can keep his money, but the one who can guide it without being driven by greed towards things that create lasting value. During his lifetime, Rockefeller was one of the most fiercely criticized men in America. The press called him a monopolist, a ruthless oil king. But those years of public outrage led him to a profound realization: wealth without moral purpose will eventually destroy itself. Instead of retaliating, he chose contribution. He established numerous charities and research institutions, including the Rockefeller Foundation, the University of Chicago, and the Public Health Institute, organizations that continue to serve millions around the world today. Rockefeller's vision went far beyond personal morality. He believed that great wealth always comes with great social responsibility. A man who uses money only for himself merely holds wealth, but a man who uses it to build, to uplift, and to improve lives creates value. "We do not truly own our wealth," he wrote. "Society merely entrusts it to us to serve a purpose greater than ourselves." Look at America today, where tech billionaires command enormous economic power, and Rockefeller's message still rings true. When Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, or Bill Gates are asked what money means to them, their answers echo the same spirit. Wealth is not the end of the journey, but the beginning of responsibility. In Rockefeller's eyes, being rich was never a privilege to be enjoyed. It was a duty to be fulfilled. Wealth only matters when it makes the world a little better. That's why his first lesson remains both simple and profound. Don't teach your child how to make a lot of money. Teach them how to be worthy of the money they make. Part 2. Discipline and integrity are the foundation of every success. If in the first part, Rockefeller spoke of responsibility as the soul of wealth, then in many of his later letters, he turned to what he called the roots of the tree of success: discipline, and integrity. Two qualities that might seem separate, but to Rockefeller, they were inseparable. Discipline keeps a person steady when faced with temptation. Integrity ensures that discipline stays on the right path. Rockefeller wasn't born into luxury. He began working at 16, earning just $3.50 a week, in a time when America's economy was chaotic and businesses competed by any means necessary. But in that environment, he learned a lesson he would repeat to his son for the rest of his life. You can lose money, you can lose opportunities, but if you lose your integrity, you've lost everything. In one letter, he described his early days as a bookkeeper. Every evening, he would carefully record every cent he spent, not because he was stingy, but because he believed that a person who cannot manage small things will never manage great ones. That discipline formed habits of precision and responsibility, the same habits that would one day help him build one of the largest industrial empires in history. Rockefeller was also known for another principle: always do the right thing, even when no one is watching. He recalled that during the oil boom, many competitors relied on bribes, manipulation, and backroom deals to win contracts. Rockefeller chose a different path, quietly focusing on efficiency, cost, and credibility. The result? When oil prices collapsed, most of those companies vanished. Standard Oil survived because it was built on a foundation of truth and trust. Even in modern America, that principle remains the guiding star for every enduring leader. Think of Warren Buffett, often called the Rockefeller of the 21st century. He once said, "It takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it." Both Buffett and Rockefeller understood that ethics isn't a luxury in business. It's the greatest asset you have. In a world where everything can be copied, integrity is the one thing that can't be bought or faked. To Rockefeller, discipline and integrity were not just tools to avoid mistakes, they were forces that allowed a person to go farther than anyone else. He believed that talent might help someone rise quickly, but only discipline and morality would keep them standing over time. Work as if God Himself was watching every action you take, because in truth, your conscience is the fairest judge of all. Today, in a world obsessed with speed, where AI, crypto, and social media create the illusion that wealth can be built in months, Rockefeller's lesson rings clearer than ever. There are no shortcuts that last. No success is worth having if it costs you your integrity. As he once wrote to his son, "If you ever have to choose between being the best or being the right one, always choose the second, because in time, the two will become the same." Part 3. The power of gratitude and humility. Among the dozens of letters Rockefeller wrote to his son, one theme kept returning, a message the world often overlooks: be grateful and be humble. To Rockefeller, this wasn't a moral cliché. It was a strategy for living, a way to protect the mind and spirit against the corrupting forces of success, power, and wealth. For he knew better than anyone, those things can change a person faster than anything else. Rockefeller once wrote, "You will never be poor if you wake up each morning with gratitude in your heart." When he said this, he wasn't living in hardship. He was the richest man on earth. But precisely because of that, he saw more clearly the trap of arrogance, the belief that I deserve everything I have. He called it the disease of the successful. He recalled that after landing his first major contract, he felt like he had touched glory itself. But just a year later, the oil market collapsed. His partner went bankrupt, and he lost nearly everything. That fall woke him up. Nothing is certain. Today's success is built on many helping hands, many chances, and countless blessings we did not create ourselves. From then on, Rockefeller developed a simple ritual that became a lifelong habit. Every night, he wrote down 3 things he was grateful for: a warm meal, a loyal employee, or even just a quiet day without chaos in the markets. This small act, he said, kept him sane in a world spinning around power and ambition. To Rockefeller, gratitude wasn't weakness, it was strength. because the grateful person sees opportunity in difficulty. The arrogant person sees only himself in every opportunity. Alongside gratitude, he placed humility as a core principle of life. Not false modesty, but a deep awareness that we can learn from anyone. In one of his letters, he wrote, "Listen to the gatekeeper as you would listen to a teacher. You never know where your greatest lesson will come from." Placed in today's context, these words sound almost revolutionary. In a world where everyone wants to stand out, where social media turns people into storytellers of their own greatness, Rockefeller's advice feels like a quiet rebellion. But that's exactly why it matters. Humility doesn't make you smaller, it allows you to grow in ways others can't see. Look at today's modern leaders: Tim Cook, Satya Nadella, Warren Buffett. They all share a quiet kind of humility. No noise, no showmanship, just calm, steady strength. They are living proof of what Rockefeller wrote more than a century ago. Greatness isn't about reaching the top, it's about staying grateful once you're there. Rockefeller understood that true wealth isn't measured in assets, but in attitude. A person may have millions and still feel poor because they're always looking upward. But someone who practices gratitude and humility, even with just enough, feels at peace. Because happiness doesn't come from having more, it comes from knowing enough and being thankful for it. Never let success make you forget those who helped you, and never let power make you forget yourself. That was Rockefeller's final message to his son, a timeless reminder that on the journey to wealth, gratitude and humility are the compass that keeps us from losing our way.
Part 4. Manage money with reason, not emotion. In one of his letters to his son, Rockefeller wrote with a tone more contemplative than usual. "My son, money has a soul. If you cannot control your emotions, it will end up controlling you." It was the voice of a man who had seen the madness of markets, the fear of crowds, and the destructive power of greed. He wasn't just talking about managing money, he was talking about managing oneself, which he believed was the true foundation of lasting success. Rockefeller understood that money itself is never the problem. Emotion is. He had watched hundreds of friends, colleagues, and rivals lose everything, not because they lacked opportunity, but because they let emotion dictate their financial decisions. When markets boomed, they rushed in out of fear of missing out. When markets crashed, they sold in panic. And between those two emotions, greed and fear, even the most talented people fell. In one letter, he recalled the financial panic of 1873, when America plunged into crisis and thousands of businesses collapsed. While Wall Street drowned in chaos, Rockefeller, then just in his 30s, stayed remarkably calm. He didn't run, he didn't rush to buy. He observed, recorded, analyzed, and acted only when, in his words, the blood had dried on the streets. That calmness allowed him to buy valuable assets at a fraction of their worth and build what would become the Standard Oil empire. But he never glorified that boldness. He told his son, "I was not braver than others. I was simply afraid in the right way." That single line reveals a truth echoed decades later by modern investors like Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger. Emotion is the enemy of profit. Rockefeller never trusted decisions made from excitement or despair. He trusted principles, discipline, and time. If he lived in the 21st century, he might look at the frenzy around meme coins, AI stocks, or crypto and smile, because he had seen it all before, only under different names. Human nature doesn't change. Only the packaging of greed does. He might have said, "When everyone insists that an opportunity can't lose, that's when you should step back and ask, are you listening to reason or just to the fear of being left behind?" To Rockefeller, reason was the shield that guards us from the emotional storms of the market. He taught his son that every dollar should be handled with clarity and respect, because money represents time, effort, and trust. You can lose an opportunity and earn it back, but if you lose your composure, you lose everything. In another letter, he reminded his son that money should never be the measure of a person's worth, but rather the reflection of their discipline and responsibility. A person with wealth but no control, he said, is like a drunk holding the wheel, unaware of where he's going, and bound to crash sooner or later. But those who act with reason see money for what it truly is, a tool for freedom, not an obsession. They spend with purpose, invest with intention, and never let their self-worth rise and fall with the stock market. If you look closely, every great financial thinker, from Rockefeller and Benjamin Graham to Ray Dalio, shares the same insight. The truly wealthy differ not in how much they have, but in how they respond when money comes and when it goes. Rockefeller once wrote in one of his final letters on this topic, "Let reason guide you in times of panic, for that is when most people lose themselves." He wasn't just talking about investing, he was talking about life itself. Because in the end, managing money with reason is really about learning to control emotion, to stay calm amid change and steady amid chaos. True wealth isn't about how much you have, it's about staying composed when everyone else is losing theirs.
Part 5. Giving is the smartest way to receive. There's something remarkable about the letters John D. Rockefeller wrote to his son. He rarely talked about how much wealth he had. Instead, he talked about giving. In one letter from 1906, he wrote, "You may secure your wealth by law, but you can only secure its blessings through gratitude and generosity." That wasn't just a moral statement. It was a profound strategy for living and growing wealth. Rockefeller understood that true prosperity only has meaning when it creates value beyond oneself. When he was young, his mother often told him, "God gave you the ability to make money not so you could hoard it, but so you could learn to use it wisely." That lesson stayed with him for life. Even when he was just starting out, with only a few dollars to his name, Rockefeller kept giving away 10% of his income to charity. People laughed at him. Why give money away when you need every cent to build your business? But to Rockefeller, giving wasn't an act of emotion. It was an investment in trust, in community, in humanity. And time proved him right. When his oil empire was under attack, by newspapers, by politicians, by the public, it was the very universities, hospitals, and communities he had once supported that stood up to defend him. Not because they owed him anything, but because they knew his generosity had been genuine. Rockefeller once said, "If money cannot be used to do good, then it has no real value. It only weighs on the conscience." For him, giving was not a moral duty, but a sign of wisdom. Smart people understand that the flow of money, like the flow of life, stops only when we try to keep it all to ourselves. Giving is how we keep value, trust, and opportunity circulating. He never encouraged blind charity. In another letter, he wrote, "Do not give because you want to be called a good person. Give because you believe that your action, however small, makes the world a better place." That philosophy became the foundation of the great Rockefeller Foundation, the seed of thousands of programs in public health, education, and science across the world. Those funds weren't charity, they were investments in humanity's future. Today, many modern billionaires, from Bill Gates and Warren Buffett to Mackenzie Scott, have followed the path Rockefeller began more than a century ago, because they understand what he wrote in his 31st letter. No one ever became poor by giving. In fact, those who give wisely
always receive far more, not just in wealth, but in peace, respect, and purpose. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson in all 38 letters, that true wealth isn't measured by your bank account, but the goodness you leave behind when you're gone. Giving doesn't make you lose anything. It makes you whole, because when you share what you have, you are affirming that you already have enough. Rockefeller ended one of his final letters with these words to his son: "Learn to give, for it is the only lesson that will ever teach you what true freedom means." And maybe if he were alive today, he'd remind us all, giving isn't just an act of kindness, it's the smartest strategy for becoming truly rich, both in wealth and in spirit.
Part 6. Family and honor are the eternal assets. In the final letters John D. Rockefeller wrote to his son, his tone grew slower, softer. No longer the voice of a man speaking to an heir of wealth, but that of a father speaking to the heir of his spirit. He wrote, "A company may fall, money may be spent, reputations may rise and fade, but the honor of the Rockefeller name and how you preserve it will outlast every fortune I leave behind." To Rockefeller, family was not just a place to return to. It was the foundation of morality and identity. He never saw wealth as the final goal, but as a tool to serve the honor of the family name, an honor built on fairness, integrity, and trust. In one letter from Pocantico Hills, he recalled the time when he was falsely attacked by the press. Instead of anger or revenge, he taught his son calmness. Others may take away your reputation for a time, but only you can lose your own honor. That wasn't just business advice from a man who had faced harsh criticism. It was wisdom from a father who knew that honor is the only thing money can never buy back. He believed every lasting success begins with a family grounded in strong values. A family that teaches not only how to make money, but why to make it honestly. Not only how to win, but how to rise again after failure without losing self-respect. In another letter, Rockefeller spoke of what he called an invisible inheritance. He wrote, "The real legacy I leave you isn't in stocks or property, but in how you treat people and how they will remember your name." That vision reaches further than any financial plan. It's about building a spiritual legacy where moral values are passed down through generations. To Rockefeller, a successful father wasn't the one who left the most money, but the one who left his children the right principles so they could live with confidence and decency. He knew well the temptation of wealth and power and how easily they can corrupt. That's why he warned his son, "Don't let your name be carved on tall buildings if your heart is hollow. Let it be etched in the memories of those you've helped." Those words came from a man who had stood at the summit of worldly success and discovered that family, honor, and character are the only things that never collapse, no matter how the world changes. In today's world, filled with headlines about corporate scandals, financial collapses, and family feuds, Rockefeller's lesson feels more valuable than ever. He wasn't teaching how to keep wealth. He was teaching how to keep oneself. A company may survive for 10, 50, or even 100 years, but a family that lives with integrity and preserves its honor can endure for centuries, bound not by money, but by trust and shared values. In his final letter to his son, Rockefeller wrote, "You may be remembered as a rich man or as a good man. I only hope you choose the latter, for a good man never truly dies." And that, perhaps, is the eternal legacy of one of the wealthiest men in history, that beyond money and power, the greatest thing you can ever leave behind is the honor of your name and the love of your family. When John D. Rockefeller wrote his 38 letters to his son, He had no idea that more than a century later, his words would still carry the same timeless truth. He didn't just leave behind a massive fortune, he left behind a map for life, reminding us that true wealth isn't measured by what's in your wallet, but how you live, how you love, and how you give. In today's world, where everything seems to be measured in numbers, where success is defined by houses, cars, and bank accounts, Rockefeller's message rings like a wake-up call. Real wealth is when you can sleep peacefully at night, knowing you've lived true to your conscience. Those letters weren't just written for his son. They were written for all of us, for those trying to stay kind in a chaotic world, and for anyone searching for a way to be wealthy without losing their soul. If you found these values worth reflecting on, please like and share this video so Rockefeller's message can reach more people. And don't forget to subscribe to join me on this journey through books that help us live richer, wiser, and more meaningful lives every single day. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next video.